Okay. Got a lesson tonight on joy, and then in April, we're gonna study Jonah. The simple story of Jonah, but I found this book that is really interesting.
Brings out a lot of points.
Yes, yes, and so I thought it would be a good one to look at. And the author is really talented because he uses a lot of alliteration and things that kind of just make you think, oh, that's kind of interesting. But anyway, so that's what we're going to start on next week. But tonight we're going to talk about joy. So let's turn to James 1:1-18. And what do you know about James? The book of James or the author or anything?
Isn't he the one that says keep our mouth shut?
Yeah, that's later on. It is. It is in there. That's where our mother's got. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
That's right.
Was he Jesus' brother?
That's the common the belief is that the James that is written, that is talked about here, was Jesus's brother. Anything else about the book that you have not remember thinking of or knowing of? I've kind of heard it's the book of practical Christianity, just plain old, down to earth, good living type encouragement and thoughts. So I want to start out by reading verses 1-4 of chapter 1. Somebody will do that.
James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes scattered among the nations, greetings. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything.
Okay. First question. What are the implications of calling yourself a slave, and then I put in parentheses, servant of God? What does that imply?
I think it could go both ways. I think it could go both ways. You could look at servant as one that goes out and serves others in the Lord's favor in order to help others. But I think servant of God also means that you serve a holy God and you do as well.
In researching and reading some other books about this, I found some points about what the implications of slavery or servant is. You're going to obey your master. So obedience is part of it. And I'm talking about in a good relationship type thing. You're going to be obedient. And as a slave, you're going to be humble. Remember what Christ did? When he said, I'm going to serve you, and he washed the feet of all the disciples. He called himself a servant there. So humility, washing feet is not the most glorious job, is it? And then the third thing is loyalty. You're serving God, you're a servant of God, so you're not going to be a servant for someone else, especially a false God. So I thought that was interesting to think about those three things: obedience, humility, and loyalty. So now turn that on us. What do you think about using those or using those to describe us as we're servants? I have a little work to do, I think. Maybe thinking about it in that regard. We say we're going to obey, and most of the time we do. But humility, sometimes it's not there, sometimes it is. And loyalty. Just thought that was an interesting thing to think about, being a servant of God. So what is the first thing James says about facing trials?
To rejoice in them.
Yeah. Close the book, I'm done here. You know? Be joyful about it. Well, that may come along, but in the beginning of a trial, you're probably not thinking, I'm sure glad this came along. I'm sure glad I'm going to be enduring this. We don't think like that, do we? So we have to train ourselves to step back from the situation, to step back from the struggle and think about, okay, this is sent to help me. And then I can think about how the joy that it might have, that outcome it might have. Does that make sense? Consider it joy or count it as joy. So what are some of the various trials that we might face? There's so many. A lot of people have faced them this year.
Well, there's health trials,
Health, I
there's
mean-
money trials, there's,
Yeah. Money can do with jobs and what else?
The COVID outbreak has really presented trials. We've gone, how long did we go before we could meet together again? Almost
6 months, huh?
I think, it was 6
We
months.
quit meeting in March and we didn't come back together until what, August, sometime in August? So 6 months of not coming together. And some still aren't. In some places. I'm thankful it's not us. Because I think it's been very hard, even though it was nice to be able to see Dell preach and do all that. It's not the same though, is it?
It isn't.
It isn't, especially when the singing and just seeing one another and going, oh, they're here, they're okay now, you know? Even if you don't speak to them, you can see, well, they're doing okay.
you could do like we did in Perry preach.
There you go.
Because he's preached on and off all his life. So we had our own services
Yeah.
without
Without the
technology.
without the internet. It's been kind of a trial for us because Sarah and Kevin and the kids would come over every Sunday morning, which was great. We loved that. But man, they got used to running around the house and, you know, up and down and eating whatever they wanted to whenever they wanted to. And we come back here and it's like, you gotta stay in this row. And they don't want to be confined like that because they work, you know? So it's been a learning experience for them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We've gone to a little church up in New Mexico for years. When we would go up to the mountains to stay in the summertime, we were there. And the kids, when they were very small, they would come in, you know, and we were always dressed well. They would come in what they had, whoever they were. The congregation was very, very small. And I will never forget the guy saying, don't worry about the kids. And he said, it's very commonplace here for kids to get up and wander and to go and
Really?
and so even though there was a lot of negative, my point in saying anything about it was, even though there's a lot of negative about not getting to be together, not being able to meet together, those that were faithful did, and they found a way to.
Yeah.
And those that, you know, I think it kind of set us back from what we're normally used to and where the church is, you
I
know,
agree.
and realize maybe some of these countries and some of these other places, store in another state,
Mhm.
you know, sometimes our practices of this is how it has to be,
Right.
had to be altered.
Mhm.
It had to be, you know, so we kind of learned and took from that, I think, too. I mean, I wouldn't trade coming back and being with everybody at all. I think we need each other. I think it's important. My kids, they needed to have that. She was really good about sitting and watching, but for the smaller ones, sitting and watching something on a video is harder to be still.
It is.
You know, when you're on a bed or you're sitting and you're watching or you're in a room,
Uh-huh.
you know. But at the other time, having a dad at home that's not faithful,
That's another.
we're sitting in a room and we remain faithful through that time.
Yeah.
And so for probably the first times of years, I guess, we've had the opportunity to sing songs that he's probably not heard in a long time, or be the example. We talk about that a lot, of being the example. And so staying faithful and continuing to be faithful in that kind of life taught some lessons too.
Yeah.
So even though we come here and done all those, he's not heard or been a part,
Right.
but through us being home, he's gotten to hear and he's kind of gotten to be a little bit of a part because we went ahead and we were faithful.
Yeah.
So lessons were taught possibly.
Yeah.
You know,
Never know.
I'll be quiet. Sorry, but it's a lot.
I think that's good for you.
You know, it's a lot of different things as trials.
That's a true struggle for you and your kids.
Very important.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we can face disappointments. We can face being pulled away from God, which is of our own doing, not God, but losses. It's been about a year, well, it was a year ago, March 20th, that my mother passed away. So it was tough. So I know all of y'all have had that in your life. So what happens as we face and overcome these trials? We grow, absolutely. In fact, in one commentary that I was reading, it says they help us soar. And I like that because not only do we grow that, but it raises us up. It raises us up. We become stronger. Every hard thing that we conquer makes us stronger and nearer to God if we allow that. The testing makes us perfect. And it's said that the testing, the perfect that you are is the perfect for the trial that you are facing. God makes you perfect for what you are facing because he's going to help you through it. Wow. Do we believe that? It's hard to see, isn't it? Because we do have some really hard things in our lives, whether it be family or friends or job or whatever. There's just some hard things that you face, but God is going to help make you perfect for facing that trial. And the testing, it cleanses and purifies us. How do you think it does that? Anytime we're closer to God, we're going to become more pure as we draw closer to him. Our heart, our mind, our soul, where's that in Psalms and several other places? We become pure. We become purified. And that helps us complete and face the task or the struggle or the trial that we're facing. And we all know that we're going to face trials. I mean, it's not a question of if, it's a question of what and when, isn't it? We're going to face trials, so we need to be ready. And we'll see that it can be a joy as we grow closer to God, and it helps us in our steadfastness. Don't you kind of like that word? Steadfast. It's not one that we use except at church, isn't it? But it's a good word for a faithful Christian. Any other comments about those? What happens as we face and overcome trials? We're an example to others as we do that. We may not even know it, but we're an example along the way. Okay, let's read James 5-8. This is one you like, Cindy.
Oh, okay. If I can read it.
Okay.
That's one of those tests and trials and growing, just not being able to read. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Let him ask in faith with no doubting. For he who doubts is like a wave of the sea driven and tossed by the wind. For let not that man suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all of his ways.
Okay. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But how many of you are like me? Okay, I'm asking for wisdom. And then on the second breath, I'm going, am I doubting or am I not doubting? Do you do that? When you're praying, you think, okay, I can't doubt as I'm asking for wisdom. And I have that in my mind. Not every time, but sometimes I think like that. I don't know why. Do you with it?
Yep.
Do you? Huh?
It's not just you.
It's not, okay. So how do we learn to deal with whatever we're facing, and what warning does James give? Ask for wisdom, right? Ask God. Sounds simple. Ask for wisdom. Learn to use your trials. Ask God to help you use your trials in the right way. I think that's what he's talking about. And how does God give it? Does he pick and choose? Liberally, generously, and without, yeah, it will be given. So all we have to do is ask. It just sounds so easy, but sometimes it's so hard, isn't it?
I sometimes think I'm not sure I want the wisdom. You know,
There's
so
your
that's
doubting.
wisdom. We just want
Yeah,
an answer. We want him to talk to us, or we want him to solve our problem.
yeah,
We don't necessarily want the wisdom, his wisdom, that would explain, maybe understand it.
yeah.
We don't necessarily want that. We want the solution.
We want the solution, or we want him to take it away. And he
Yes.
wants us to go through it, because a lot of times that's what we are. Take this away, God. I don't want to have to deal with it.
Yep.
But when in reality, he's giving it to help us work through and grow our faith and learn by that, so that we can help others too.
Mhm.
So you're right. Yeah, we're like, I don't know if I want.
I don't think I ask for wisdom near enough. I ask for other things, not necessarily wisdom.
Yeah, I'm with you there. So maybe we need to think about that as trials come before us, because my response oftentimes is, take it away. I don't want this. When I not should be asking for that. Well, that's not necessarily wisdom, is it? But what we should be asking God is, help us face this. Give us the strength. Show me the way and how to glorify you in this struggle, in this trial. I'm talking to myself here. I may be teaching this class, but it's for me.
Yeah, great.
Exactly. Because I do struggle with this.
Or a prayer where you're not sure how he's gonna answer the prayer. And so you open up every single possible door so that you don't feel a letdown if it doesn't go exactly your way.
Yeah.
Is that-
Well, and sometimes, yeah, and sometimes I think we try to figure it all out in our mind, and God's gonna take us in a totally different direction. And we think, well, how can he possibly let this happen, you know?
And that's something, it says when you pray, you have to ask in faith, with no doubting. And by saying, okay, Lord, well, I don't know what you're going to do. Instead of saying, Lord, we don't know it's like praying for someone who's ill. It very well could be that it's possible that going to heaven and being with God is better than where they're going to be here. And sometimes that's a hard prayer to ask when
It
it's somebody
is.
you love.
Yeah, you're
And
exactly right.
you don't know how you're gonna make it without that loved one.
Yeah.
And so you're asking, Lord, I need this person, but what would be best for them?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I think that's where the wisdom and the understanding comes in, and God can help us see that if we're open to it. Which, that's why we're praying, is because we are open to it. These are hard lessons, very deep. I just want to live life, right? Just let me wake up and do my little chores and go on about my business, But that's not how we grow. That's not how our faith increases. That's not how we stay steadfast. That's not how we can be a Daniel. It's just not. And it says that, verse 7, for the person must not suppose that he will receive anything from the Lord if he is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. We don't want to be that way. We want to be able to be that strong, stable person that God can rely on, that he can give us wisdom, and that we can make it through the trials and the struggles and be stronger and closer and nearer to him. Some hard things. So this is a summary from the commentary that I was reading on this. I have to have help. I can't think of all these things on my own. So if we are to use aright the experience of life to beget a sterling character, those are words we don't use, is it? Or we must ask wisdom from God, and when we ask, we must remember that the absolute generosity of God, and I know this didn't make sense, but I wrote it just as it was there. And we must see to it that we ask believing that we shall receive that which God knows it is good and right for us to have. He may not have known what he was saying, because part of those words don't make sense. But I double checked it.
Maybe believing has quotes around it.
Yeah,
We ask believing that we shall receive that which God knows.
there you go.
That is good for, right?
Yeah.
Maybe
That's probably it. I read it 2 or 3 times though, and I don't know, it just made good sense. But I like the way he said a sterling character. How is something purified? How is, say silver or gold, how is it purified? Fire. Yeah. So facing that trial, isn't it?
Bringing the torch to us.
Yeah. Sounds painful.
Yes.
Most of the time it is. Okay, verses 9 through 11.
For you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Concerning this salvation, the prophets who spoke of the grace that was to come to you.
Right.
Searched intently and, am I in the wrong place? I am in the wrong place. Sorry.
It's okay. I was just trying to make sense out of it. Uh-huh, 9-11, chapter 1.
Believers in humble circumstances ought to take pride in their high position, but the rich take pride in their humiliation, since they will pass away like a wild flower. For the sun rises with scorching heat and withers the plant. Its blossom falls and its beauty is destroyed. In the same way, the rich will fade away, even while they go about their business.
Does that make sense to you? It's kind of hard to go, kind of read through that, isn't it?
Tell us not to be rich.
Huh? What do you say?
We better not be rich.
We better not be rich. Well,
You can't take it with you.
that's true. That's true. But here's a thought. What does Christianity provide for the rich and the poor? What does it provide for the poor? Christ gave him value. Yeah. Everyone is the same, rich or poor, in Christianity. We all have the same worth because of the sacrifice that was made for everyone. So the poor man can find value in Christianity. He can find self-worth, that he is worthy. Can't get away from that word, I guess. And the rich man learns that he must humble himself and not be dependent on himself because of his riches, but dependent on God. Because we're all the same in the eyes of Christ, in the eyes of God. So we can't, like Esther said, we can't take it with us, so we don't need to put our trust in worldly things. So the rich man has to be careful because that's easy to do. We put our value on material things. And what does God say about those? They're going to wither and die like the flowers.
So the poor have to depend on God. It's like they don't really have another choice to survive in this world where the rich people don't have to. I mean, they need to.
Right. Right. And we think we're not rich, right?
Right. Not me. I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So but I just thought that was an interesting thought because we tend to place class value on things, people, whatever, I don't know. And God doesn't. A soul is a soul. A soul saved is a soul saved, rich or poor. And so for those who do feel unworthy, we need to help them realize that they are worthy because Christ died for them as well. What reward is waiting for those who persevere? Verse 12. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. Now that one's straightforward, isn't it? We can read that one and we can know exactly what it says. Blessed, happy is the person who remains steadfast in trials. And as we learned from Daniel last week, we may be facing some trials. And pray all the time that I can be steadfast in that trial that might come up.
Well, we actually are.
We are, you're right.
Just with the COVID, so many are homebound, so many can't go places. we're wearing these.
Mhm. Yeah, that is a trial, isn't it? It is.
It keeps your nose warm.
Well, you can't, it's a good thing it's even hot, Val.
My stays cold all winter, so I haven't mind.
The summer's coming.
It has been a trial for us, and I think, we should be thankful that we have the mindset that we want to be here and to study. We do have a reward, eternal reward, but isn't there a reward now? I think so too, absolutely. I mean, you're happy. That's a reward.
Even with all the stuff going on.
Yeah, right. Still joy. Okay, verses 13 through 15.
Whenever you feel tempted to do something bad, you should not say, God is tempting me. Evil cannot tempt God, and God himself does not tempt anyone. You are tempted by the evil things you want. Your own desire leads you away and traps you. Your desire grows inside you until it results in sin. Then the sin grows bigger and bigger and finally ends in death.
Okay, describe that progression. So what happens?
So it starts with a desire.
The desire. And you either nourish that desire, and what happens when you do that? It leads you to sin. You feed your mind that desire over and over and over. Or what can you do to a desire to make it go away? Squelch it, right? Or put it out of your mind. And where do you get good gifts come from? God, right? And God, a lot of people want to blame God for temptations, but it's not, it isn't God. It says clearly here that he does not tempt.
Isn't it interesting that the first culprit is not Satan, that they go directly to the Creator?
Yeah,
And I mean, you know, you'd think that they would think this is coming directly from Satan. You know, they don't.
yeah,
God will be the first one that, I don't know why God let this happen to us.
right.
Well, and I think that's partially, Satan whispering his lies to you, trying to lead you astray.
Yeah. So what do we learn about God in verses 16 through 18? Oh, I think I jumped ahead of myself here. Do not be deceived, my beloved brothers. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow to change. Of his own will, he brought us forth by the word of truth, that he should be a kind of that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. So what do we learn about God? The giver of every good gift. What else?
He loves us more than all
Yeah,
creation.
he does. Anything else? He has taught us by the word of truth. Okay. His word is truth.
It doesn't change.
He doesn't change. Yeah, he's unchangeable. Those two things, truth, in these days, I can't even get out the words. In these days, how many times do people say stuff and it is not true? I mean, over and over and over again. But we can be sure that what we read here is true. We don't have to be concerned that it's not true. And that is huge, isn't it? Plus the fact that God is unchangeable. Okay, so summary. Connect joy as you face trials. It's for your benefit. And ask for wisdom as you go through them. Wisdom to get through them, not to eliminate them, so that you can grow and be complete and remain steadfast. Okay, we have a little bit of time left. Let's turn over to Philippians 4. Philippians is that book where Paul talks about joy a lot, and he's in prison. That's just hard to comprehend, isn't it? That's it, joy. Okay, Philippians verses 5 through 8.
Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation and prayer and petition with thanksgiving, and present your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Is that the right one?
Yeah,
That was
one more.
one more.
We were one more verse.
Okay. Oh, finally, brothers and sisters, do love everything. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Okay. So here, Paul says, rejoice always. And then I said, is that possible? We probably have to think about it a little bit and work it out in our minds to make it be joyful for us. But when you think about the fact that Paul was in prison when he wrote this, and he says, rejoice always. And again, I say, rejoice, you know? You have to just wonder. So Paul's points of joy. So Charlotte Mize, who wrote this book that I've been getting these thoughts, some of the thoughts from, broke these down. Gentleness. My Bible said reasonableness. I think there's several versions. What does gentleness, how does that help you in rejoicing? So you're a teacher. How does gentleness help in the classroom when you're tempted to be?
Be careful how you answer. That's what I'm thinking.
It sculptures the fuse.
Yeah.
Being gentle. It helps you to be more joyful when you think about how, if you're thinking, you know, if this was my child, how would I want them to be treated?
Yeah.
You know, it just helps calm,
Calm. That's a good word.
provide the calm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The calm spirit gives you time to think through it. You're gentle. You have to think about being gentle. You can be in a rage real easy, right? But you have to pull yourself back from the situation and think a little bit in order to show gentleness or reasonableness. So you're taking time to think. Okay, what about the Lord is near? How does that help? Wow. I mean, that's huge, isn't it? He's with us. He's ready to hear us. He's interested. He wants to know about our struggles. Remember, he says more than once, I will never leave you. I will never leave you. And we know that that's true. That is a true comfort, and you can rejoice in that. Don't be anxious about anything.
That's been hard.
Yes, especially this past year. We've been anxious about a lot of things that has to deal with COVID, numbers going up, more people in the hospital, not being in school, not going to work, working from home. So again,
That's about the election.
of the election. I have put that out of my mind. It's okay. Yeah, Yeah, that's, you know, it's one of those things.
It's over, we don't have to be anxious.
I
about it
know,
anymore.
I know.
Let's do it.
There's nothing to be anxious about now. Don't be anxious about anything. We need to share our burdens, because the next one is, well, actually being anxious robs you of joy, doesn't it? So just think about that. It's the anxious is the opposite. It robs you of the joy that you can have from day to day or moment to moment.
It also takes you out.
It does. It affects you physically. And God's telling us, don't do that. He's going to help us. Present your request to God. He's always ready to listen. We don't have to make an appointment. We don't have to wait 2 or 3 days to talk with him. He's always ready to hear. He doesn't even sleep at night, so you can talk to him through the night if you need to. Remember, the king Darius prayed all night when Daniel was in the lion's den? Peace of God. You know, unless you know God, you can't know and understand that peace. In fact, it's a peace that passes understanding. It's hard to understand. But how many of you, I mean, Tommy's out of town a lot. I don't worry about it. Just go to sleep at night, you know? I trust in God that everything will be okay. Let's see, I was thinking that it said something. The peace of God, we need to guard our hearts. I don't know why that thought, I have that thought written down. I don't know where it came from, just maybe my mind.
4:7.
Is it in there?
Yeah, it says,
Okay.
will guard your hearts
Guard your
and
hearts,
minds
okay.
in Christ Jesus.
Good, thank you, Esther. I knew it was there something. Guarding our hearts has to do with our thoughts, our actions, what we see, what we hear. We have to guard ourselves. Not talks about how important that is, but when we do that, we're at peace. What else?
It also allows us to let very difficult situations, if we're really,
Mm-hmm.
we have the peace of God, we can, so I don't know all the answers and I don't know how you're gonna
And
work
it's
it out.
okay that we don't know all the answers, isn't it?
Sometimes it's hard to understand that, but yes.
Sometimes God withholds the answers because it's better for us not to know. I think. And we have to accept that and allow his peace to be with us. I don't know how people make it through life. They're always struggling and anxious and worried about something, aren't they? And finally, he says, think about these things. This is how you can guard your heart, is by thinking on these things. This is how you can keep your mind and your heart in the right place. What are they?
Things that are good, worthy of praise, true, honorable, right, pure, beautiful, things that are respected.
All those words.
Garbage in, garbage out.
That's right. What you put in your brain, what's
Yep.
gonna come out of your mouth.
That's right.
So here, this is what God's plan is, isn't it?
So we need to be putting those things in our.
Right, right. And
Yeah,
it's so
maybe
hard
so.
for kids nowadays to realize that, I think.
Oh, yeah. But it says PG-13, why can't I watch it?
I know, yeah, exactly.
I'm almost 13.
She's 10.
Yeah.
I'm 45,
That's almost
and some of the stuff in PG.
In his mind, it's almost 13.
I can't.
And then mine is almost 13, yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, no.
There's no reason to watch it. I'm 25 and I don't wanna watch it.
Right.
Just because it has a number doesn't mean it's worthy of putting in your brain.
Well, that's about all of our time, so thank you for all of your participation and thoughts as we look at these